coffee mug slipped from Paloma's fingers, shattering against the cafe floor as she stared at her phone screen. There it was, splashed across City Snoop's homepage in bold, cruel letters: Billionaire's contract bride exposed. The virgin who played him for millions. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the article. Private details of her life, things she'd only shared with Kellen in their most vulnerable moments, were now entertainment for strangers. The writer had twisted her choice to wade into something shameful, something calculated. They'd taken her truth and weaponized it. "Paloma, honey, are you okay?" Her coworker Maria rushed over with a broom, but Paloma couldn't move. The cafe's morning rush blurred around her as one thought consumed her mind. How could something that started with such pure intentions become this ugly? "They called me the virgin gold digger. They said I trapped him with innocence, that I used my purity as currency. But they didn't know the truth about why I married Kellen Drake, or how a business contract became the greatest love story of my life." Welcome back to Rich Billionaires Romance Stories, where love meets luxury and every story has a twist. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button right now because today's story will leave you absolutely breathless. I'm about to tell you how a struggling artist agreed to marry a billionaire CEO for 1 year, how her deepest secret became tabloid fodder, and how respect and patience transformed a paper marriage into something real. But here's what the gossip sites missed. When you're standing at the crossroads between survival and dignity, when your mother's medical bills are drowning you, when a powerful man offers you a lifeline with surprising conditions, what would you choose? Would you sign your name on a marriage contract if it meant saving everything you loved? Would you trust a stranger with your secrets? This isn't just another billionaire romance. This is about Kellen Drake, the man who controlled a multi-billion-dollar empire but couldn't control his growing feelings for the woman he hired to be his wife. This is about how I, Paloma Reyes, walked into a glass tower expecting a business transaction and walked out with a man who would defend my honor against the world. From our chance meeting at a lantern festival where we saved a child from falling, to the moment I told him something I'd never told anyone, to the night we stood before his board of directors and chose truth over convenience, every moment led us here. To real vows, to real love, to a partnership that started with signatures and ended with souls. So buckle up, because over the next hour, you're going to witness how a marriage of convenience became inconveniently real. You'll see how boundaries became bridges, how contracts became promises, and how two people from different worlds discovered that love isn't something you fall into, it's something you build, one respectful choice at a time. Ready? Let's go back to where it all began. 6 months before that horrible article, when Kellen Drake discovered his grandfather's will had a clause that would change everything. 6 months earlier, Kellen Drake sat in the mahogany-paneled boardroom of the Northlight Foundation, his jaw clenched as he listened to words that would upend his carefully ordered world. "The terms are non-negotiable, Mr. Drake." Vera Sloane's voice carried the weight of decades spent honoring his grandfather's legacy. "Your grandfather's will is crystal clear. Control of the Foundation's next phase transfers to you only upon marriage. You have until your 35th birthday." Kellen's fingers drummed against the polished table. "That's 6 months, Vera. 6 months to find someone willing to marry into this circus. Your grandfather believed marriage demonstrated commitment to community, to building something beyond yourself." Board member Harrison Wells leaned forward. "The foundation funds housing for 3,000 families, arts education for 12,000 children, and healthcare initiatives across the city. Without this transfer, those programs face uncertainty." The weight of responsibility pressed against Kellen's chest. Drake North Holdings was his domain. Numbers, strategies, acquisitions he could control. But this required something he'd never mastered: vulnerability. "The board won't accept a sham marriage," Vera continued. "We need genuine commitment, public appearances, and evidence of a real partnership. The city needs to see you as someone who values relationships, not just revenue." Kellen stood, his 6'2" frame casting shadows across the conference table. 34 years old, worth $8 billion, and he was being held hostage by his grandfather's romantic ideals. But those ideals funded hope for thousands of people who depended on Northlight's programs. "Fine," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos in his mind. "I'll find someone, but this will be done with dignity. No pressure, no manipulation. Anyone who agrees will have independent legal counsel and complete transparency about what they're signing up for." As he walked out, Kellen had no idea that his future wife was across town, teaching children to paint with colors that matched their dreams. Kellen's penthouse office occupied the 42nd floor of Drake Tower, floor 2 ceiling windows offering a commanding view of the city he was determined to serve. His assistant, Annika Desai, had worked with him for 5 years and knew his patterns better than anyone. "The marriage candidates," she said, placing a leather portfolio on his desk. 12 women from appropriate backgrounds. All have been briefed about the arrangement's nature. Kellen didn't open the folder. Instead, he walked to the window, his reflection ghost-like against the glass. Below, people moved through their lives, working, loving, struggling, while he orchestrated deals that affected thousands of jobs, millions in investments. "Tell me about them," he said without turning around. Accomplished, intelligent, financially independent. Dr. Sarah Chen, the neurosurgeon. Victoria Ashford from the museum board. Elena Rodriguez, the federal prosecutor. "Stop," Kellen's voice was quiet. "Do any of them need this arrangement, or are they just available?" Annika paused. She'd watched Kellen build walls around his heart after his father's death, after his ex-fiancée Delphine chose his business rival over him. He approached relationships like mergers, calculated, protected, emotionally distant. "What are you really asking, Kellen?" He turned from the window, and for a moment, Annika saw past the CEO mask of the man underneath. "I'm asking if any of them would benefit from this beyond the novelty of being married to a billionaire. Because if I'm going to ask someone to give up a year of their life, I want it to matter for them too. That's not how these arrangements typically work. Then maybe we need to work differently." Kellen's voice carried a determination Annika recognized, the same tone he used when deciding to fund a risky startup or support an unconventional charity. "Find me someone who needs what I can offer. Someone with dreams bigger than their current circumstances. Someone who would see this as an opportunity, not just an obligation." Annika nodded, already mentally revising her search parameters. She had no idea she'd find exactly what he was looking for at a community center across town. The annual Harbor Lights Festival transformed the waterfront into a constellation of floating dreams. Thousands of paper lanterns bobbed on the evening breeze, each one carrying a wish. Toward the stars. Kellen had come alone, seeking solitude after another frustrating day of marriage interviews. He stood apart from the crowds, watching families laugh together, couples share quiet moments, children chase fireflies between the vendor stalls. This was what his grandfather had wanted him to understand: community, connection, the messy beauty of human relationships. "Careful, mijo," a woman's voice cut through the festival noise. Kellen turned to see a small boy, maybe 6 years old, leaning dangerously over the pier's edge, reaching for a lantern that had drifted too close to the water. The child's feet slipped on the wet wooden planks. Without thinking, Kellen lunged forward just as a young woman in a paint-stained apron dove from the other side. She caught the boy's wrist while Kellen steadied them both, his hands gripping the child's shoulders. "You've got him?" Kellen asked, his heart hammering. "I've got him," she replied, her voice steady despite the adrenaline. She carefully pulled the boy back to safety, then knelt to his level. "Miguel, what did we say about staying close to Mama?" The boy's lower lip trembled. "But my lantern, it was flying away." The woman, Kellen noticed her dark hair escaping from a messy bun, her eyes warm with patience, gently cupped the child's face. "Lanterns are supposed to fly away, remember? They carry our wishes to the stars. Your wish is already traveling." She stood, brushing off her knees, and finally looked at Kellen. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you would have saved him anyway," Kellen said, surprised by his own certainty. "You moved faster than I did." She smiled, and something shifted in Kellen's chest. "I'm Paloma. Kellen. He wanted to say more, to ask about the paint on her apron, about why she moved through the world, like she was protecting something precious. But Miguel's mother appeared, sweeping the boy into grateful arms, and the moment fractured. "Thank you both," the mother said in rapid Spanish, tears in her eyes. When Kellen looked back, Paloma was walking away, her figure disappearing into the crowd of lantern light and laughter. Standing alone on the pier, Kellen watched Paloma's retreating figure until she vanished completely. The rescued boy's lantern had finally caught the wind, soaring high above the harbor, with its cargo of childhood wishes. Something about the moment lingered, not just the quick reflexes or the shared rescue, but the way she'd handled the aftermath. No drama, no lingering for gratitude or recognition. She'd simply ensured the child was safe, reminded him that letting go was part of the process, and moved on. Kellen pulled out his phone, almost calling Annika to ask her team to find the woman named Paloma. But he stopped himself. If their paths were meant to cross again, they would. His grandfather had always said the best things in life couldn't be forced, only welcomed when they arrived. He didn't know that 3 blocks away, Paloma was helping pack up art supplies from the community center's festival booth, her mind still replaying the moment when a stranger's strong hands had helped her save a child. She didn't know his last name, didn't know about his billions or his deadline or his desperate search for a wife. All she knew was that for 30 seconds, they'd moved together like partners, protecting something innocent and precious. It was exactly the kind of partnership that would define their future, built on instinct, trust, and the shared desire to catch what was falling. Have you ever met someone who changed your life in a single moment? Drop A in the comments if you believe in fate. Kellen had no idea that the woman who helped him save a child would soon become his salvation too. And while you're at it, make sure you're subscribed to Rich Billionaires Romance Stories for more heart-stopping tales like this one. Because what happens next will prove that sometimes the universe has plans we never see coming. 3 weeks after the Lantern Festival, Paloma Reyes stood in the community center's art room, watching 8-year-old Sofia carefully blend yellow and orange on her canvas. The afternoon sun streamed through windows that needed replacing, casting golden light across tables scarred by years of creative chaos. "Miss Paloma, is this how the sun looks when it's happy?" Sofia asked, holding up her painting of a house surrounded by flowers. "That's exactly how happy sunshine looks," Paloma replied, her heart swelling. This was why she worked 2 jobs: the morning shift at Café Luna, and afternoons here at Centro Esperanza. These children needed a place where their imaginations could flourish, where art supplies weren't luxuries their families couldn't afford. But the center was struggling. Funding cuts meant fewer supplies, shorter hours, and the constant threat of closure. Paloma's dream of opening Lumen House, a permanent arts and wellness hub where children could create, learn, and simply breathe, felt more distant each month. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. "Doctor moved my appointment to Thursday." "Don't worry, mija." Paloma's chest tightened. "Don't worry," as if she could stop worrying about the medical bills piling up on their kitchen table, about her mother Alondra's forced optimism when discussing treatment options they couldn't afford. Alondra worked as a seamstress, her fingers flying across fabric, even when arthritis made each stitch painful, but insurance only covered so much. "Miss Paloma?" Sofia's voice pulled her back. "Are you okay? You look sad." Paloma managed a smile, just thinking about how to make more beautiful spaces like this one. After the children left, Paloma stayed to clean paintbrushes and organize supplies. The center's director, Mrs. Garcia, found her there as evening shadows lengthened. "Paloma, you know we can't pay you more," Mrs. Garcia said gently. "I wish. I'm not asking for more money," Paloma interrupted. "I'm here because this matters. These kids matter." Mrs. Garcia nodded, understanding the weight of dreams deferred. Neither woman knew that across the city, Anika Desai was reviewing security footage from the Lantern Festival, tracking down the identity of a paint-stained woman who'd helped save a child. The next morning, Paloma was wiping down tables at Café Luna when a woman in an elegant navy suit entered, carrying a bouquet of white roses, and an expression of careful professionalism. "Paloma Reyes?" The woman approached with a warm smile. "I'm Anika Desai. I work for Kellen Drake. Could we speak privately?" Paloma's hand stilled on the table. The name meant nothing to her, but something in Anika's demeanor, respectful not presumptuous, made her curious rather than wary. They sat on a bench beneath oak trees, the morning bustle of the city a distant hum. Anika placed the roses between them like a peace offering. "3 weeks ago, you helped save a child at the Harbor Lights Festival," Anika began. "My employer was there. He was impressed by your character." Paloma frowned. "I don't understand. Kellen Drake runs Drake North Holdings and oversees the Northlight Foundation. He's facing a unique situation that requires a unique solution." Anika's voice remained steady, professional. "He needs to be married within 6 months to fulfill the terms of his grandfather's will. Without this marriage, funding for community programs across the city, including arts education, will be delayed indefinitely." The words hung in the air like smoke. Paloma stared at Anika, waiting for the punchline that never came. "You're asking me to marry a stranger. I'm presenting an opportunity," Anika corrected gently. "A 1-year legal marriage with clearly defined terms, no physical intimacy required, separate living spaces, complete financial transparency. In return, Mr. Drake would fund your Lumen House project, cover your mother's medical expenses, and provide ongoing support for Centro Esperanza." Paloma's breath caught. "How do you know about—" "We researched your background, yes, but only to understand what you care about, what you're working toward. This isn't charity, Paloma. It's a partnership. You would have your own legal counsel, complete control over how the funds are used, and the right to end the arrangement at any time." Anika pulled out a business card. "I know this sounds overwhelming. Take time to think. If you're interested, call me. We'll arrange a meeting where you can ask every question, set every boundary, and decide if this arrangement serves your goals." As Anika walked away, Paloma sat holding the roses, her mind reeling. A marriage of convenience, funding for her dreams. Her mother's health was secured. It sounded too good to be true, which usually meant it was. That evening, Paloma sat at her kitchen table staring at Anika's business card while her mother prepared dinner. The medical bills were spread before her, numbers that represented hope and fear in equal measure. Alondra hummed softly as she chopped vegetables, the same melody she'd sung when Paloma was small and afraid of thunderstorms. But Paloma could see the careful way her mother moved, protecting joints that ached more each day. "Mija, you're thinking so loud I can hear it from here," Alondra said without turning around. Paloma looked up. "Mama, what would you do if someone offered you everything you needed, but the price was complicated?" Alondra set down her knife and joined Paloma at the table. Her weathered hands, still beautiful despite years of hard work, covered her daughter's. "Tell me about this complication." Paloma explained everything: the stranger from the festival, the marriage proposal, the funding for Lumen House, the medical bills that could disappear. She watched her mother's face for judgment, for shock, for the practical wisdom that had guided them through every crisis. Alondra said finally, "What do you know about his?" "Nothing. That's the problem." "No, Mija. The problem is you're thinking with fear instead of wisdom." Alondra's voice carried the gentle firmness that had shaped Paloma's moral compass. "Fear says, what if this is a trap? Wisdom says, what if this is an opportunity to serve something bigger than yourself?" Paloma felt tears threatening. "But what if I'm selling myself? What if I become someone I don't recognize?" "You think marriage changes who you are?" Alondra smiled. "Marriage reveals who you are. If you entered this arrangement with integrity, with clear boundaries, with respect for yourself and this man, then you remain yourself. The question isn't whether you should do this. The question is, can you do this and still look at yourself in the mirror with pride?" They moved to the small living room, where family photos covered every surface: Paloma's art school graduation, Alondra's wedding day. 3 generations of women who'd faced impossible choices with grace. "When your father died," Alondra said, settling into her favorite chair, "people told me to be practical. Sell the house, move somewhere cheaper, give up on your art classes. They said dreams were luxuries we couldn't afford." Paloma curled up on the couch. remembering those dark months when grief and financial pressure had threatened to drown them both. But I looked at you, so determined to create beauty, even when the world felt broken, and I knew, we don't abandon dreams. We find new ways to reach them. Alondra's eyes sparkled with unshed tears. Maybe this is your new way, but the marriage part, Mama. It feels like lying. Is it lying if both people understand the truth? If you're honest about your intentions, your boundaries, your hopes? Alondra leaned forward. Listen to me, Mija. I've watched you give everything to those children at the center. Work yourself exhausted to pay for my treatments. Sacrifice your own dreams to take care of everyone else. When was the last time you let someone take care of you? Paloma's throat tightened. That's different. No, it's not. This man needs something you can provide. Partnership, respectability, companionship. You need something he can provide. Resources, security, the chance to build Lumen House. If you approach this with honesty and respect, where's the shame? Alondra stood and kissed Paloma's forehead. Decide from peace, not fear. Ask yourself, what choice would make you proud in 10 years? What choice serves not just us, but all those children who need what you want to build? As her mother went to bed, Paloma sat alone with the business card, feeling the weight of possibility and responsibility in equal measure. Paloma didn't sleep that night. She walked through their small apartment, touching familiar objects. Her father's books, her mother's sewing machine, her own paintings lining the hallway. Each item told a story of love, sacrifice, and dreams deferred, but never abandoned. At 3 a.m, she found herself in her makeshift studio, the converted closet where she painted when inspiration struck. Her latest canvas showed children's hands reaching toward light, their faces bright with possibility. It was her vision for Lumen House made manifest in color and hope. She thought about Sophia's question, is this how the sun looks when it's happy? What if she could create a place where hundreds of children could discover their own happy sunshine? What if this strange opportunity was the universe's way of saying yes to dreams she'd almost given up on? But marriage, even a marriage of convenience, carried weight, expectations, the potential for complications she couldn't foresee. What if this Kellen Drake was cruel beneath his wealth? What if the arrangement became a prison disguised as opportunity? As dawn broke over the city, Paloma made her decision. She would meet him. She would ask every hard question, set every necessary boundary, and trust her instincts to guide her. If he proved worthy of her respect, if the arrangement truly served both their needs without compromising her values, then she would take the leap. She picked up her phone and dialed Annika's number, her heart hammering with equal parts terror and hope. The conference room on the 38th floor of Drake Tower felt like a cathedral of glass and steel, the city sprawling below like a living map. Paloma sat across from Kellen Drake for the first time since the Lantern Festival, her lawyer Maria Santos beside her. Legal documents spread between them, like a bridge waiting to be crossed. Kellen looked different in his charcoal suit, more imposing, more distant, but his eyes held the same quiet intensity she remembered from that night at the pier. He'd arrived early, Annika had mentioned, pacing the hallway like a man preparing for the most important negotiation of his life. "Let's begin with living arrangements," said James Morrison, Kellen's attorney. "The penthouse has a separate wing, private entrance, full kitchen, office space. Ms. Reyes would have complete autonomy over her schedule and activities." Maria leaned forward. "And Mr. Drake's access to this space? By invitation only," Kellen said, speaking directly to Paloma. "Your home is your sanctuary. I won't violate that." They moved through each clause methodically. Public appearances, 6 formal events, 2 interviews, attendance at foundation galas. Financial arrangements, a monthly stipend, full funding for Lumen House. Alondra's medical expenses covered completely. Duration, 12 months from the wedding date, with options for early termination by either party. Physical intimacy, Maria said, her voice professional but protective. "The contract specifies none is required or expected." "Correct," Morrison confirmed. "This is a legal partnership, not a romantic relationship." Paloma watched Kellen's face during these discussions. He never looked uncomfortable with the boundaries. never pushed for more access or control. Instead, he seemed almost relieved by the clarity, as if he too needed protection from expectations he couldn't meet. "What about media intrusion?" Paloma asked. "My mother, my work at the center, I won't have them turned into entertainment. We'll hire security," Kellen said immediately. "Discreet but effective. Your privacy and your family's safety are non-negotiable." As the lawyers discussed confidentiality clauses and exit strategies, Paloma found herself studying the man across from her. Wealthy, yes. Powerful, certainly. But there was something careful in how he spoke about her boundaries, something almost vulnerable in how he avoided her direct gaze. She was beginning to understand that Kellen Drake might need this arrangement as much as she did, just for different reasons. The lawyers stepped out for a private consultation, leaving Paloma and Kellen alone in the glass-walled room. The silence stretched between them, filled with unasked questions and careful assessments. "You can ask me anything," Kellen said finally, his voice softer without the legal audience. "About my expectations, my character, my reasons for this arrangement." Paloma turned from the window where she'd been watching clouds drift across the sky. "Why me? You could have chosen anyone, someone from your world, someone who understands this life. Because you moved without hesitation to save a child you didn't know. Because you didn't ask for anything in return. Because when I researched your work at the center, every person I spoke to described you the same way, someone who protects what matters." The honesty in his voice surprised her. She'd expected corporate speak, calculated charm. Instead, she heard something raw, almost lonely. "I need to tell you something," Paloma said, her heart hammering. "Something personal that might affect your decision." Kellen waited, his attention complete. "I've never been intimate with anyone." The words came out steady despite her racing pulse. "Not because I'm afraid or naive, but because I chose to wait for someone I could trust completely. I won't have that choice turned into gossip or speculation. I won't be reduced to a talking point about purity or innocence." She watched his face for judgment, for the calculating look men sometimes got when they thought they'd found something to exploit. Instead, Kellen's expression grew more serious, more respectful. "Thank you for trusting me with that," he said quietly. "I give you my word. Your privacy, your choices, your reasons are yours alone. I won't let anyone turn your personal decisions into public entertainment." Something shifted in the room, a recognition passing between them like a shared secret. Kellen stood and walked to the window, his hands clasped behind his back. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight Paloma hadn't heard before. "My ex-fiancée left me for my business rival 2 years ago," he said without turning around. "She said I was too controlled, too emotionally unavailable. That I treated relationships like mergers, all strategy, no heart." Paloma remained silent, sensing this confession cost him something. She wasn't wrong. "I've spent so long protecting myself, building walls, that I forgot how to let people in. This arrangement, it feels safer because the boundaries are clear. No one gets hurt because no one expects more than what's written on paper." He turned back to face her. "But what you just shared with me, that took courage I'm not sure I possess. You're trusting a stranger with something precious, something that could be weaponized against you. That's not strategy, that's faith." Paloma felt her chest tighten. "I'm not sure it's faith. Maybe it's just desperation dressed up as hope." "No," Kellen said firmly. "Desperation would have made you agree to anything. Hope makes you set boundaries. Faith made you tell me the truth when you could have stayed silent." He moved closer, but not invasively, just close enough that she could see the sincerity in his eyes. "I can't promise this will be easy. I can't promise I'll always know the right thing to say or do, but I can promise you this. I will never use your trust against you. I will never let anyone else do so either. Your choices, your timeline, your comfort, they matter more than any contract." The room fell quiet except for the distant hum of the city below. Paloma felt something loosening in her chest, a knot of fear she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. "I believe you," she said simply, and for the first time since entering the building, Kellen smiled, not the polished CEO smile but something genuine and warm. "Would you sign a marriage contract with a billionaire?" Comment yes or no below. But here's the real question. Would you have the courage to be as honest as Paloma just was? To trust someone with your deepest truths when everything is on the line? And if you're loving this story, show Rich Billionaires Romance Stories some love by hitting that like button. It really helps us bring you more incredible stories. Because what happens next will prove that sometimes the most important contracts aren't written on paper. They're written on the heart. When the lawyers returned, the atmosphere in the room had fundamentally shifted. The legal documents remained the same, but the people signing them had changed. Where there had been careful strangers, now sat two individuals who'd chosen vulnerability over protection. "Are we ready to proceed?" Morrison asked, noting the subtle change in his client's demeanor. Paloma looked at Maria, who nodded encouragingly. "The terms are fair, mija. More than fair." "There's one addition I'd like to make," Kellen said, pulling out his phone. "Annika, could you bring up the revised clause we discussed?" Annika entered with a single sheet of paper. "An addendum to the original contract." Paloma read the new clause aloud. "Both parties commit to treating this arrangement with dignity, respect, and honest communication. Any violation of trust or privacy by either party, or by their representatives, constitutes grounds for immediate contract termination, with full financial obligations honored." "You're protecting me in writing," Paloma said, looking up at Kellen. "I'm protecting us both. Trust works both ways." Maria reviewed the addendum carefully. "This is unusual. Most contracts focus on obligations, not character." "Most contracts aren't built on faith," Kellen replied. Paloma picked up the pen, her hands steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to do. 12 months, she said. 12 months, Kellen agreed. They signed simultaneously, their signatures intertwining on the page like a promise made in ink. As the lawyers gathered the documents, Paloma felt a strange sense of completion, not ending, but beginning. "So," she said, standing to shake Kellen's hand, "when do we get married?" "Next Friday," he replied, his grip warm and sure. "City Hall. Small ceremony. Just us, Annika, and whoever you'd like to bring. My mother will want to meet you first." Kellen's smile was genuine. "I'd be honored." As they left the conference room together, neither realized they'd just signed the first page of a love story that would redefine everything they thought they knew about marriage, trust, and the courage to let someone see your heart. Friday morning arrived with golden September light streaming through the windows of City Hall. Paloma stood before the mirror in the small bridal suite, adjusting the simple cream dress her mother had sewn for her. Elegant silk with delicate embroidery along the sleeves, a design that honored tradition while embracing new beginnings. "You look beautiful, mija," Alondra whispered, fastening a pearl necklace that had belonged to Paloma's grandmother. "Your father would be so proud." Paloma's hands trembled slightly as she touched the pearls. "Mama, what if we're making a mistake? What if this changes us in ways we can't predict?" Alondra turned her daughter to face her, cupping her face with gentle hands. "Change isn't the enemy, fear is. You're not losing yourself today. You're discovering who you can become when someone believes in your dreams." In the hallway outside, Kellen waited with Annika, his navy suit impeccable but his expression nervous. He'd barely slept, not from doubt about the arrangement, but from the unexpected weight of the moment. This wasn't just a legal formality anymore. It felt like a promise he wanted to keep. "Ready?" Annika asked, noting his unusual fidgeting. "I think so," Kellen replied, then paused. "Annika, what if I'm not good at this? At being someone's husband, even in name only?" "You're good at keeping your word," she said simply. "Start there." The ceremony itself lasted 15 minutes. Judge Patricia Morales, a family friend of Alondra's, officiated with warmth and dignity. When Kellen slipped the simple gold band onto Paloma's finger, his touch was gentle, reverent. When she placed his ring, her voice was steady as she repeated vows that felt more real than either had expected. "You may kiss the bride," Judge Morales announced. They shared a brief, soft kiss, their first, that tasted like new beginnings and careful hope. Annika wiped away a tear she hadn't expected, and Alondra beamed like sunshine itself. The penthouse elevator opened directly into Kellen's home, but it was the rooftop that took Paloma's breath away. Glass walls enclosed a garden sanctuary 42 floors above the city. Raised beds overflowing with herbs, tomatoes heavy on their vines, and a small reading chair positioned beside a stack of well-worn books. "My father started this," Kellen said, watching her explore the space with wonder. "After my mother died, he said growing things helped him remember that life continues, that beauty persists even after loss." Paloma knelt beside a bed of basil, inhaling the sharp, clean scent. "And you maintained it?" "I expanded it. When work becomes overwhelming, when the numbers stop making sense, I come here. It reminds me that some things can't be rushed, can't be controlled, only with patience." She stood, brushing soil from her fingers, and looked at him with new understanding. "You're not as controlled as people think, are you?" Kellen's smile was rueful. "I'm controlled because I have to be. But here," he gestured to the green sanctuary around them. "Here I can just be." Paloma walked to the glass wall overlooking the city. Below, people moved through their lives, working, loving, struggling, while above, in this quiet space, two strangers who'd just become spouses were learning to see each other clearly. "I'd like to paint here," she said, "if that's okay. The light is extraordinary." "This is your home now, too," Kellen replied. "Change anything you want. Add anything you need." She turned back to him, noting how he stood slightly apart, hands in his pockets, as if he wasn't sure he belonged in his own sanctuary now that she was there. "Kellen," she said gently, "we're going to share this space, not divide it. You don't have to give up your refuge to make room for me." Something in his shoulders relaxed. "I'm still learning how to share space without losing myself in it." "Then we'll learn together," Paloma said, "one day at a time." As the sun set over the city, they stood in comfortable silence among the growing things, both sensing that this greenhouse would become the heart of whatever they were building together. Over the following weeks, they developed rhythms that surprised them both with their naturalness. Mornings began with tea on the terrace. Kellen with his black coffee and financial reports, Paloma with chamomile and her sketchbook. They didn't always talk, but the shared silence felt companionable, rather than awkward. "Your schedule is completely booked," Annika mentioned during one of their morning briefings. "The Morrison acquisition, the board meeting, the charity gala." "Cancel the 3 o'clock, Kellen interrupted, not looking up from his tablet. "Paloma has her art class with the kids today. I want to see the Lumen House." Paloma glanced up from her sketching. "You don't have to." "I want to," he said simply, "if you don't mind the company." That afternoon, Kellen sat in the back of the bright, airy space that had once been Paloma's impossible dream, watching her guide 12 children through a lesson on color theory. She moved between them with infinite patience, celebrating each small discovery, turning mistakes into opportunities. "Mr. Kellen." Sophia, the girl from the community center, ran over with her painting. "Look, I made the sunshine happy again." Kellen knelt to her level, studying the canvas seriously. "That's the happiest sunshine I've ever seen." "What's your secret?" "Miss Paloma says you have to paint with your heart, not just your hands." Later, as they walked home through the city streets, Kellen was unusually quiet. "What are you thinking about?" Paloma asked. "Those kids, the way they look at you, like you're showing them magic. Art is magic. It transforms ordinary materials into something meaningful." Kellen stopped walking. "Is that what you're doing with me? Transforming something ordinary into something meaningful?" Paloma considered this seriously. "I think we're doing that for each other." Their evening walks became sacred time. No phones, no business, just two people learning to trust each other's company. As the city settled into the night around them, Keaton Fox from the Metro Ledger arrived at the penthouse with the predatory smile of a journalist who'd built his career on exposing the secrets of the wealthy. He'd requested this interview specifically, claiming interest in the foundation's community impact, but his questions quickly revealed his true agenda. "So, Paloma," he said, leaning forward with calculated charm, "how does it feel to have won the city's most eligible bachelor? What was your strategy?" Paloma set down her teacup with deliberate calm. Beside her on the sofa, Kellen tensed, but she placed a gentle hand on his arm, a signal that she could handle this. "I didn't win anything, Mr. Fox. Partners aren't trophies to be won or lost. Kellen and I chose each other for reasons that serve both our goals and values. But surely you must have known about his wealth when you agreed to marry him?" Of course I knew, just as he knew about my work with children, my dreams for Lumen House, and my commitment to community service. We're both adults who made an informed decision. Keaton's smile sharpened. Some might say this arrangement is rather convenient. A struggling artist, a billionaire with a deadline. Some might say a lot of things, Kellen interrupted, his voice carrying a warning edge. But the only opinions that matter are ours. Paloma brings more to this marriage than I could have hoped for. Her integrity, her passion for helping others, her ability to see possibilities where others see problems. Those aren't conveniences. They're gifts. Paloma looked at him with surprise. This wasn't the scripted response they'd practiced. The Foundation's community programs have expanded 30% since our marriage, she added. Lumen House serves over 200 children monthly. If that's convenient, then I'm proud to be convenient. Keaton left with far less scandal than he'd hoped for, and far more respect than he'd expected to find. 3 months into their marriage, an October storm struck the city with unexpected fury. Paloma was in the greenhouse, tending to the tomato plants, when the lights flickered and died. Rain hammered against the glass walls like desperate fingers, and lightning split the sky in brilliant, terrifying displays. She'd always been afraid of storms, a childhood fear she'd never quite outgrown. In the darkness, surrounded by the violence of wind and rain, she felt small and vulnerable. "Paloma?" Kellen's voice came from the greenhouse entrance. "Are you okay?" "I'm here," she called back, her voice smaller than she'd intended. He found her by the reading chair, arms wrapped around her knees. Without asking permission, he sat on the floor beside her, close enough to offer comfort, but not so close as to crowd her. Lightning flashed again, closer this time, and Paloma flinched. Without thinking, Kellen reached for her hand. "May I?" She nodded, and he took her fingers in his touch warm and steady. "My grandfather used to say storms were just the sky having big feelings," he said. "When I was little and scared, he'd have me count the seconds between lightning and thunder. Want to try?" They counted together. 5 seconds, 4, 3. The storm moving closer, then gradually farther away. Somewhere in the rhythm of counting, of shared breathing, of his thumb tracing gentle circles on her palm, Paloma's fear transformed into something else entirely. "Better?" he asked when the thunder began to fade. She looked at him in the dim light filtering through the storm clouds. His face was close enough that she could see the concern in his eyes, the careful way he held himself, offering comfort without demanding anything in return. "Kellen," she whispered. "Yes?" Instead of answering, she leaned forward until their foreheads touched. They stayed like that, breathing the same air, sharing the same space, as the storm raged around their glass sanctuary. When the lights finally returned, they separated slowly, both understanding that something fundamental had shifted between them. 4 months into their marriage, Paloma arrived at Café Luna for her weekly visit with her former co-workers. The familiar scent of coffee and pastries welcomed her as she pushed through the door, but the sudden hush that fell over the room sent ice through her veins. Maria, her friend and former manager, rushed forward with concern etched across her face. "Paloma, have you seen it?" "Seen what?" Maria hesitated, then handed over her tablet. The headline from City Snoop blazed across the screen: "Billionaire's contract bride exposed. The virgin who played him for millions." Paloma's coffee mug slipped from her fingers, shattering against the cafe floor as she stared at the screen. The article detailed her private revelation to Kellen during their negotiation, information only he, the lawyers, and Annika had been privy to. It painted her choice as calculated manipulation, suggesting she'd used her virginal status to secure a more favorable contract. "How could they know this?" she whispered, her hands trembling as she scrolled through the vicious speculation about her marriage. Across town, Kellen sat in his office reviewing quarterly reports when Annika burst in without knocking, something she'd never done in 5 years of working together. "City Snoop," she said, placing her tablet on his desk. "Someone leaked private information about Paloma." Kellen's face drained of color as he read the headline. his hands clenched into fists, knuckles white with rage. "Find out who did this," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Now." He reached for his phone to call Paloma, but it rang before he could dial. Her name flashed on the screen. "Paloma, I swear I didn't—" "I know," she interrupted, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "I need to go home. I need a day to breathe." "Of course. Whatever you need, Kellen." Her voice softened. "This isn't your fault." But as he hung up, Kellen knew differently. He had promised to protect her, and he had failed. That evening, Paloma sat in the greenhouse, wrapped in a blanket despite the warmth, staring at the city lights below. The article had generated thousands of comments, shares, and speculation. Her phone had buzzed constantly with messages from friends, from the center, from parents of her students, all concerned, all wondering. Kellen found her there, approaching cautiously. "May I join you?" She nodded, making space on the bench. They sat in silence for several minutes, the weight of the day settling between them. "I should have protected you better," he finally said. "I'm so sorry, Paloma. You can't control what people say or think." "No, but I can control how we respond." He turned to face her fully. "I've had Morrison investigating all day. The leak came from someone at the law firm, a junior associate who accessed confidential files and sold the information to City Snoop." Paloma closed her eyes. "Why would someone do that? Money, attention, or—" Kellen hesitated. "There's a possibility it was orchestrated by Victor Blackwood." "Your business rival, the one Delphine left you for?" Kellen nodded. "He's been trying to block the foundation transfer. If he can prove our marriage is just for show, he could convince the board to delay the final approval." Paloma considered this, her artist's mind piecing together the larger picture. "So this isn't just about humiliating me. It's about destroying what we're building together." "Yes." She stood, wrapping the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "Then we don't hide, we don't apologize. We tell the truth, our truth." Kellen looked up at her, surprised by her resolve. "Are you sure? Once we respond, this becomes an even bigger story." By morning, they had crafted a joint statement. No drama, no defensiveness, just clarity and dignity. They acknowledged the marriage had clear terms and a specific purpose. They confirmed their commitment to respect and privacy, and they stated, unequivocally, that personal choices were not fodder for public consumption. The statement went out at 9 a.m. By noon, the Northlight Foundation Board had called an emergency meeting. The Northlight Foundation boardroom felt colder than Paloma remembered, the faces around the massive table more severe. She sat beside Kellen, her posture straight, her expression composed despite the anxiety churning inside her. Everything they'd built together, Lumen House, her mother's treatments, the expanded community programs, all hung in the balance. "This is precisely what we feared," Harrison Wells said, tapping the printed City Snoop article. "A marriage of convenience, a contract bride, a publicity stunt." "With respect, Mr. Wells," Kellen replied, his voice steady. "The terms of my grandfather's will required marriage. It did not specify the nature of that marriage, only that it be legal and genuine in commitment. The public perception is being manipulated by someone with a financial interest in seeing this foundation transfer fail," Kellen interrupted. "Victor Blackwood stands to gain control of 3 development projects if the foundation's funding is delayed." Vera Sloan, who had worked alongside Kellen's grandfather for decades, studied them both with shrewd eyes. The article suggests Ms. Reyes used her personal status to secure a more favorable arrangement. Paloma felt heat rise in her cheeks, but met Vera's gaze directly. "My personal choices are exactly that, personal. I shared that information with Kellen during our negotiation because honesty was important to me. Someone violated that trust for profit. And yet," another board member interjected, "the question remains, is this a real marriage or a business transaction?" The room fell silent. Paloma looked at Kellen, saw the tension in his jaw, the careful control he maintained even now. She reached for his hand on the table, a gesture they'd never shared in public before. "Every marriage is both," she said quietly. A promise and a partnership. The only difference is that we were honest about our terms from the beginning. Kellen's fingers tightened around hers, a silent thank you for not walking away when she could have. After 2 hours of debate, Vera Sloan asked for the room to be cleared except for Kellen and Paloma. As the other board members filed out, she remained seated at the head of the table, her silver hair gleaming under the lights, her expression unreadable. "I knew your grandfather for 40 years, she said to Kellen once they were alone. "He was a romantic, yes, but he was also practical. He didn't include the marriage clause to force you into some fairy tale. He included it because he believed partnership made people better, more accountable, more compassionate, more connected to the world beyond themselves." She turned her attention to Paloma. "When you married Kellen, did you understand what you were committing to?" "I understood I was committing to honesty, to mutual respect, to supporting his work with the foundation, while he supported mine with the children." Vera nodded, then asked the question that would change everything. "Do you love him?" The directness caught Paloma off guard. She could have lied, could have given the answer that would secure the foundation transfer. Instead, she chose the truth. "I'm still choosing," she said softly, "but every day it gets easier." Vera's eyes widened slightly at the unexpected honesty. She turned to Kellen. "And you?" Kellen didn't calculate, didn't strategize. For once in his life he simply spoke from his heart. "I love her," he said, the words falling from his lips like a revelation. "Not because she cleans my image or fulfills some clause. I love her because she changed my pace. She made me better." The silence that followed felt sacred, as if the room itself was holding its breath. Finally, Vera smiled, a genuine warm smile that transformed her severe features. "That," she said simply, "is exactly what your grandfather hoped for. If someone exposed your deepest secret to the world, could you forgive them? Let me know in the comments." Paloma and Kellen faced their greatest test when their private life became public gossip, but what they did next will surprise you. And hey, if you want to see how this scandal unfolds, make sure you're subscribed to Rich Billionaires Romance Stories with notifications on. Trust me, you don't want to miss what happens next. Because sometimes, the moment when everything could fall apart is exactly when true love reveals itself. The board members filed back into the room, their expressions ranging from skeptical to curious. Vera Sloan remained at the head of the table, her eyes holding a warmth that hadn't been there before. "We've reached a decision," Harrison Wells began, but Kellen stood, interrupting him. "Before you announce anything, I need to say something." His voice carried a new authority, not of business, but of conviction. "When I agreed to this marriage clause, I saw it as an obstacle to overcome, a checkbox to mark. I was wrong." He looked at Paloma, drawing strength from her steady presence. "This woman has taught me that real partnership isn't about contracts or convenience. It's about choosing someone every day, especially when it's difficult. She's shown me that vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the foundation of genuine connection." Kellen turned back to the board. "If you reject the foundation transfer because our marriage began unconventionally, so be it. But know this, what started as an arrangement has become the most real thing in my life. I won't apologize for finding love in unexpected places, and I won't let anyone, not Victor Blackwood, not City Snoop, not even this board, diminish what we've built together." The room fell silent. Paloma felt tears threatening, moved by his public declaration of what had been growing privately between them for months. Vera Sloan stood slowly, commanding the room's attention. The Northlight Foundation was built on the belief that love and service are inseparable. Kellen's grandfather understood that true wealth lies not in what we accumulate, but in what we give and how we connect. She looked directly at Kellen and Paloma. "What I've witnessed today, honesty in the face of scandal, partnership despite pressure, and genuine care for each other in this community, embodies everything this foundation represents. The board approves the transfer," she announced, "with one additional requirement: a third-party audit every quarter to ensure complete transparency in how funds are distributed. We believe this will only strengthen the foundation's impact." "We welcome the oversight," Kellen said immediately. Transparency has been our goal from the beginning. Harrison Wells cleared his throat. There's also the matter of Victor Blackwood's interference. We'll be filing a formal complaint about his attempts to manipulate this process. As the meeting concluded, board members approached to offer congratulations and support. Several mentioned how Paloma's work with Lumen House had already impacted their own grandchildren. Outside the boardroom, Annika waited with barely contained excitement. The press release is ready. We're announcing the full transfer and the expansion of community programs. Paloma felt Kellen's hand find hers, their fingers intertwining naturally. They had won, not through deception or manipulation, but through truth and mutual respect. The victory felt sweeter because they'd earned it together. 2 weeks later, Lumen House officially opened its doors in a renovated warehouse near the park. Sunlight poured through tall windows, illuminating art stations, reading nooks and spaces designed for children to create, learn, and dream. Paloma stood at the entrance, watching families stream in for the opening celebration. Children who'd been cramped in the community center's single room now had an entire building dedicated to their growth. Parents who'd worried about after-school care now had a safe, enriching environment for their kids. "Miss Paloma!" Sophia ran up, dragging her younger brother. "Look, there's a whole room just for painting." Kellen appeared beside her, having spent the morning helping set up easels and organize supplies. Paint streaked his expensive shirt, but his smile was genuine as he watched the children explore. "You did this," he said quietly. "We did this," she corrected. "Your funding, your connections, your belief that it could happen, your vision," he interrupted. "Your passion, your refusal to give up even when it seemed impossible." Alondra approached, tears streaming down her face as she embraced her daughter. "Your father would be so proud, Mija. You've created something beautiful from struggle." As the day progressed, Paloma moved through the space like a conductor orchestrating joy. She guided tours, demonstrated techniques, and somehow made every child feel seen and valued. Kellen watched from the doorway, understanding finally what his grandfather had meant about partnership making people better. Paloma hadn't just changed his pace, she'd changed his purpose. That evening, Kellen led Paloma to the rooftop greenhouse, now glowing with strings of warm lights he'd installed while she was at Lumen House. A small table held champagne and the simple dinner he'd prepared. Nothing fancy, just her favorite pasta and the tomatoes they'd grown together. "What's all this?" she asked, wondering in her voice. "A reset," he said, suddenly nervous. "We started with lawyers and contracts and obligations. I want to start again. Just us, no terms except what we choose." He pulled out a small box, not containing a ring, but 2 simple silver bands engraved with coordinates. "The location of Lumen House," he explained, "where your dreams became reality, where I learned what partnership really means." Paloma's hands trembled as she took the box. "Kellen, I know we're already married," he continued, "but I want to make promises that aren't written on any paper. I promise to protect your peace over my pride, to ask rather than assume, to celebrate your dreams even when they challenge my plans, to be your partner in truth, not just in name." Tears slipped down Paloma's cheeks as she found her voice. "I promise to tell you the truth even when it's scary, to believe the best of you before fear creeps in, to make our home a place of growth and grace, to stand with you when the world tries to rewrite our story." They slipped the new bands on, wearing them alongside their wedding rings. Then Kellen cupped her face gently, asking with his eyes what his words couldn't. "Yes," she whispered. Their kiss was nothing like the brief touch at City Hall. This was deep, certain, a claiming and a surrender all at once. When they finally parted, both were breathless. They moved to the bench where they'd weathered the storm months ago, sitting close as the city sparkled below. Paloma rested her head on Kellen's shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him, the steady beat of his heart. "I need to tell you something," she said softly. "That day in the boardroom, when Vera asked if I loved you." Kellen tensed slightly. "You were honest. You're still choosing." "No." She sat up to look at him directly. "I mean, yes, I was honest then. But Kellen, I'm not choosing anymore. I'm falling in love with you. Maybe I have been since that night you held my hand in the storm. Maybe since you defended me to Keaton Fox. Maybe since you spent all morning setting up easels for children you'd never met. His eyes searched hers, vulnerable in a way she'd rarely seen. Paloma, I know we didn't plan for this. I know it complicates everything. But I can't pretend anymore that this is just an arrangement. Not when you've become my best friend. Not when coming home to you feels like breathing. Not when... He silenced her with another kiss, pouring into it all the words he'd held back for months. When they parted, he pressed his forehead to hers. I'm right here, he whispered. I've been falling for you since you told me partners aren't trophies. Since you trusted me with your truth. Since you chose to build something real from something arranged, under the greenhouse stars, surrounded by growing things and gentle light. Two people who'd started as strangers chose love, not because a contract required it, but because their hearts demanded it. Weeks passed after their greenhouse promises, each day deepening the connection between them. They moved through their home with new awareness, lingering touches, meaningful glances, the electricity of possibility humming between them. One evening, as they prepared dinner together, Paloma caught Kellen watching her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. What? She asked softly, setting down the knife she'd been using to chop vegetables. I'm trying to be patient, he admitted, his voice rough, to let you set the pace. But Paloma, every time you look at me like that... She moved closer, her hand finding his chest, feeling his heartbeat race beneath her palm. I've been thinking about trust, she said, about how you've shown me every day that my boundaries matter, that my choices are respected. They are, always, I know. She looked up at him, her eyes clear and certain. That's why I'm ready to choose more, with you. If you're willing to go slow, let me lead. Kellen's hands framed her face with infinite gentleness. We go at your pace. We stop whenever you say. Your comfort matters more than anything else. That night they discovered each other with careful reverence, questions asked, permission given, boundaries honored. It was a dance of trust as much as desire, each touch a promise, each whispered yes, a gift freely given. When morning came, they made breakfast together, comfortable in their skin and their choices, knowing they'd crossed a threshold not just physically, but emotionally. The past arrived on a Tuesday morning in the form of Delphine Klein, Kellen's former fiancée, sweeping into Drake North Holdings in designer heels and calculated confidence. I need 5 minutes, she told Annika, who looked ready to call security. Kellen received her in his office, Paloma beside him, a united front Delphine clearly hadn't expected. You must be the contract bride, Delphine said, her smile sharp as glass. How practical. You must be the ex who left for Victor Blackwood, Paloma replied calmly. How predictable. Kellen almost smiled at his wife's unexpected steal. What do you want, Delphine? Victor's being investigated for the city Snoop leak. His assets are frozen. I need an investment for my new venture. She turned to Kellen with practiced vulnerability, for old time's sake. No. The single word hung in the air. Delphine's composure cracked. You'd help her. She gestured at Paloma, but not me. Paloma's never betrayed my trust, Kellen said simply. She's never chosen someone else's money over our relationship. She's never tried to manipulate me with shared history. This is because of her, isn't it? She's changed you. Yes, Kellen agreed without hesitation. She's taught me the difference between someone who wants my wealth and someone who wants my partnership. I'm grateful you left, Delphine. It led me to something real. Delphine left with nothing but the echo of her heels on marble. Paloma squeezed Kellen's hand, proud of how he'd handled his past with dignity and clarity. No looking back? She asked. Only forward, he promised. With you. The first anniversary of Lumen House arrived with a block party that closed 3 streets. Chalk art covered the pavement, children's laughter filled the air, and parents shared stories of how the center had changed their families' lives. Keaton Fox stood at the edge of the celebration, notebook in hand but expression uncertain. He'd requested this meeting through Annika, promising a different kind of story. Paloma found him watching a group of teenagers teaching younger kids to mix colors. Mr. Fox, I wasn't sure you'd come. I wasn't sure you'd let me." He turned to her, his usual predatory smile replaced by something genuine. "I owe you an apology, both of you." Callan joined them, protective but willing to listen. "I built my career on cynicism," Keaton continued, "on believing every relationship had an angle, every gesture had a price. But watching you two this past year, I was wrong." He gestured to the celebration around them. "This isn't just about funding programs, it's about two people who chose to build something meaningful from an unconventional beginning, who faced public scrutiny and responded with grace, who turned a business arrangement into a love story that's actually changing lives." "What are you saying?" Paloma asked. "I'm saying I want to write a different story, about Lumen House, about the foundation's impact, about what happens when people choose partnership over profit." He met their eyes. "If you'll let me," Callan and Paloma exchanged glances, communicating without words. "Everyone deserves a second chance," Paloma said finally. "Even cynical journalists." As the sun set over the block party, Paloma and Callan walked hand in hand through the celebration, stopping to admire chalk masterpieces and accept hugs from grateful parents. She led them to a massive chalk mural depicting Lumen House surrounded by handprints in every color imaginable. In the center, children had written messages. "This place saved me. I learned I'm an artist here. Thank you for believing in us." Mrs. Garcia from the old community center appeared, tears in her eyes. "Do you see what you've done? 3 of our kids got art scholarships this year. 2 more started teaching younger children. The ripple effects, they just keep spreading." A father approached, holding his daughter's hand. "My Maria was failing school before Lumen House. Now she's excited to learn, to create. You gave her confidence that I couldn't afford to buy." As story after story poured out, children discovering talents, families finding community, dreams taking root in concrete reality, Paloma felt Kellen's arm wrap around her waist. "We did something good," she whispered. "We did something real," he corrected. "Something that will outlast us both." The celebration continued into the evening, a testament to what could happen when 2 people chose to build something larger than themselves. When love became action, when partnership served purpose beyond profit. 1 year after their City Hall wedding, the rooftop greenhouse glowed with hundreds of paper lanterns, each one handmade by children from Lumen House. Paloma stood at the edge of their sanctuary, watching guests mingle below, board members chatting with community center families, her mother laughing with Anika, even Vera Sloan teaching Sophia how to fold origami stars. "Full circle," Kellen said, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of champagne. "A year ago we met at a lantern festival, now we're hosting our own." Paloma accepted the glass, her wedding rings catching the light. "A year ago I was terrified I'd lose myself in this arrangement, and now I know I didn't lose myself. I found a bigger version of who I could be." She turned to him, memorizing his face in the golden light. "With you, the evening was perfect. Children performing songs they'd learned at Lumen House, parents sharing testimonies about how the programs had changed their families, and through it all, Kellen and Paloma moving together like dancers who'd found their rhythm." As midnight approached, Kellen took Paloma's hand. "Come with me, I have something to show you." He led her to the center of the greenhouse where a small clearing had been created among the tomato plants and herbs. Their families and closest friends formed a circle around them, faces glowing with anticipation. "Paloma," Kellen began, his voice carrying over the gentle night breeze. "A year ago, we signed papers that bound us legally. We made promises born of necessity, not love. We agreed to terms and conditions, boundaries and timelines." He dropped to one knee, pulling out a small velvet box. Inside wasn't a new ring, but their original wedding bands, the simple ones from City Hall. "Tonight, I'm asking you to choose me again. Not because a contract requires it, not because the foundation depends on it, but because somewhere between that first cup of morning tea and tonight's celebration, you became my heart's home." Tears streamed down Paloma's face as he continued. "Contracts protect, but promises devote. You changed me, Paloma. You taught me that love isn't found in boardrooms or built on paper. It's chosen daily, in small acts of trust and large leaps of faith. Will you marry me again? Will you choose us knowing everything we've been through, everything we've built, everything we can still become? Paloma knelt to meet him at eye level, cupping his face in her hands. Yes, she whispered. I choose you again. I choose us. Forever this time. The greenhouse erupted in celebration as they kissed, their guests showering them with paper stars folded by children whose lives they'd changed. As the celebration continued around them, Paloma found herself thinking about that horrible morning at Café Luna, when City Snoop had exposed her deepest secret and called her a calculating virgin who'd trapped a billionaire. What are you thinking about? Kellen asked, noticing her distant expression. The article. How they said I used my innocence as currency, that I manipulated you with purity. She looked up at him. They were so wrong about everything, but also, in a twisted way, they were right about one thing. Kellen frowned. What do you mean? My choice to wait, it did change everything. Not because I used it as leverage, but because sharing that truth with you was the first real moment between us. When you responded with respect instead of judgment, when you promised to protect my privacy, that's when I started to trust you. And that trust became love, Kellen finished. The gossips thought they were exposing a scandal. Instead, they were documenting the beginning of something real. Paloma smiled. They called me the virgin gold digger. They said our marriage was just a contract. They were half right, it did start as a contract. But what they missed was how two people chose to honor that contract with integrity, and how that integrity grew into love. The best revenge, Kellen said, pulling her close, is a life well lived, and a love well built, Paloma added. So there you have it, proof that true love can bloom even from a contract. Kellen and Paloma's journey shows us that sometimes the most unconventional beginnings lead to the most beautiful endings. If this story touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button and join the Rich Billionaires Romance Stories family. We're building a community of people who believe in real love, respect, and second chances. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that love can grow in unexpected places, and comment below, do you think Kellen and Paloma's love will last forever? What was your favorite moment in their journey? I read every single comment and love hearing your thoughts. Until next time, remember, the best love stories are the ones worth waiting for.